Hi and welcome to this week's episode hosted by Gray and Mark Lawson, St John's Health and Fitness and Mark Elm of Leeds Beckett University, where we take training theory and science onto the gym floor.
Hey up everybody, welcome back to the Yorkshire Fitness Podcast. Today we are going to be speaking about breathing. You want to have a little go at breathing now, just like I did? And whenever I say breathing, for some weird reason, I always breathe. When I'm talking to people about it, I end up going, it's like as if people don't actually know how to breathe. So what's inspired us to today's podcast is just a Christmas book. I know I said birthday book. So I got bought a book about breathing techniques called Breath by James Nestor. Just found some really interesting facts. Mark's already read a book called The Oxygen Advantage. So we've just been chatting about it and discussing, comparing the books. Threw it over to our mate Elm, Mark over here, to get his little scientific view on things, and we just said, you know what, it'd be quite a good episode for people because there's probably a lot of things things that I were unaware of in the book, and I think most people are. So we thought it'd be quite a good topic to cover. So about 30 minutes, and we'll cover as much as we can. That sound all right, boys?
Yep. Good to me. Well, I've not read these two books, so I'm kind of learning from you boys as we go through this. So what was it about the two books that went, well, this is kind of a bit really important, this is a game changer? What made you go from breathing is just something we'd have to think about to, I've read a whole book on it and now I want to talk about it?
Go on. Do you want to go? I'll start really simply. This was quite an eye opener for me. I remember being a kid, and I actually remember people telling me to, when we were exercising, like rugby training, wherever. I think even teachers, PE teachers, kind of thing. Breathe in through your nose, out through your mouth. You know, like, and even parents, my mum and dad, I can't remember, it just sticks in there a little bit. Breathe in through your nose constantly. In through your nose, out through your mouth. You know, like reminding you. And it's something I haven't done. I've never told one of my kids. I've pretty much coached all three of my kids at some point in the lives. And all kids that I have coached, have been coaching rugby for years and years. Never once when we've been doing these drills have I said, make sure you breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. Because I've kind of just ended up thinking, no, you just breathe. It don't matter how you breathe, just breathe. It's about getting oxygen in, about getting carbon dioxide out. And the book that I read, the James Nestor one, I think it's the lost art, a new science of a lost art. And it's kind of like, I think breathing has been forgot. We do just take breathing for granted now, whereas I don't think we used to. So that was like my big thing. We're like, well, why have we stopped talking about breathing? Why do we not tell people about the benefits of breathing through your nose? So obviously the book goes into the benefits of nasal breathing. So that was my big eye-opener to the book and what made me want to speak about it more. And that Oxygen Advantage, I think, we're a little bit different with that.
Yeah. Well, I hadn't thought of it like that, what Ray said, but he's right. In teachers and coaches, I do remember him saying that, and I've never once passed that on to any kids who I coach neither. And I've coached loads, same as him. But it was just more the benefits of it and the physiological side of it, and then into even that mental thing that we'll discuss a little bit. It just makes sense that you breathe through your nose. That's what it's designed to do. It is designed to breathe through, and we've all just become mouth breathers without realizing. And they put it down to because we all bloody talk too much, don't we? You know, like they said, that's one of the things. We all talk so much that as mouths are open constantly, and we've just lost the ability a lot of time, or the thought to breathe through your nose, because you've probably got to make it a bit more of a conscious decision. I think some people naturally still do breathe through the nose, that like, or when they're not talking or when they're breathing, but it was just all that, but it was the benefits of it and how it, you know, like we'll discuss, won't we, your diaphragm, how it makes you breathe through your diaphragm rather than just upper chest breathing, and then the benefits of that, both from just being more efficient as a breather, and also just how it calms your body down a little bit as well, and switches it all off. So yeah, there were the other things, and then the fitness benefits. Then there were also the others. Oh, and then that was the other thing as well, wasn't it? It filters everything, doesn't it? It filters. It helps prevent infection and loads and loads of different stuff. So it just goes on and on and on. I think it said that there were like between 20 or 30 benefits of breathing through your nose compared to breathing through your mouth, or 30 reasons why your nose is designed for breathing through.
So things like that's what led us on to speaking to the people who we train, our clients, our members and stuff. So we were just chatting about the benefit, like asking people's advice, like actually, do you breathe through your nose? And it's like majority of people just take it for granted.
Yeah. So you've then read up on it, haven't you? And looked into it a little bit further.
Yeah, so I mean, I go back to my undergrad days, my sports science degrees, and so a lot of things we're going to talk about, I kind of learned from the opposite end of that process. So I'll talk about the internal physiology, the internal anatomy, and what their job was and how the body works. But we never actually attached it to the manner in which you breathe. So it's only relatively recently those two things have started to be talked about in public. So I maybe a few years ago, the old Navy SEAL box breathing started to become. I think CrossFit picked up on that, and obviously CrossFitters talk about CrossFit a lot, so that got put out there, and so I started to kind of attach my understanding of physiology and anatomy to how we breathe, and they are linked. They are two sides of the same coin. But yeah, so I started to because I not read the books and add a little bit more to this conversation, but tried to read a few of the papers that might have been referenced by the books, and just to make sure that I've kind of done my background reading and the science part of it to see what I can see. And I found some really bizarre things. I think the most bizarre thing that I found from some of the research that I read, and you guys probably read the books and saw this as well from a different perspective, is the shape of your face. And that was like, I did not expect to read this. So things like dentistry and facial features are changed if you breathe through your nose or your mouth. You're like, wow, I was not expecting to find that. All sorts of things about kind of respiratory tract infections or stress and anxiety. That stuff I thought I'd see, but then the idea that the way that you breathe changing the shape of your face was just ridiculous. And I thought, well, that's important. Not that I can do much about my face now, but just the fact that it might change because the way that you breathe is ridiculous.
But yeah, fascinating. That was amazing, wasn't it? That was crazy.
Yeah,
like you said, to change the structure.
Yeah, so we dig into a little bit about. We want to focus on the health side of things today. We said we try and approach these parts. One part on the health, which applies to every single person that we'll speak to, and then other part on the health and the fitness perspective of it, which some people are really bothered about being fitter, and some people are more minded to be just that little bit healthier. So we said we'd focus a little bit more on a health part of it today.
Yeah.
So I think that the thing I think is probably the biggest impact on modern life, modern society, and how that might help nasal breathing is just stress or underlying levels of stress. Not being like stressed out, off work, sick, stressed, although that can be part of it. It's just everyday managing of life stress. And one of the parts of physiology that I will talk about is how your nervous system works. And there's two kind of big parts to it, which is the motor system, the thing that helps you move around and move the way that you want to move. And the second half is what's called the autonomic, or the kind of the underlying, the subconscious nervous system that keeps basically the body working as it should work without you really thinking about it. You don't really think about your lungs moving, you don't think about your digestive tract, but they all keep working because of this autonomic nervous system. Well, that in itself is divided into two modes, not halves, but two modes. Most people have heard by now the fight, flight, or flight, which is not easy to say, mode. Fight used to be fight or flight. We've had freeze and that stuff in later, which is basically the stress side of things. We call that the sympathetic nervous system, but the stressed state. And then we've got the relaxed state, or the parasympathetic nervous system. Way back when we were kind of hunter-gatherers roaming the plains of Africa, we didn't really need to use this stressed out state all that often. You're usually walking around picking berries and plants from the floor, and then every now and again something might try to kill you, or you might try to kill something. We need this more stressed out state, but we didn't need it all the time. But as we move into this more industrial society, more kind of digital society, stressors are everywhere all of the time. So what people are now finding themselves is this stressed out state, this kind of hyper state, is on far more. And you might have adapted to that mentally, but your body hasn't. Your body's finding this really taxing to be involved in. And one of the links to that is the fact that the way that we breathe helps us move between those two systems. We said before we have a bit of a drinking game for if we're going to mention the word downregulate, I reckon about 1 billion times this episode. So breathing helps us downregulate our levels of stress. So if we're deep breathing and relaxed breathing, then we're more likely to be not stressed out. Not like always psychological stress, physical stress, psychological stress, emotional stress, all physically have the same action. So if I'm deep nasal breathing, then I'm more likely to be calm, not releasing all these stressed out hormones, and therefore my body's in a more healthier state. So that's the kind of some underpinning kind of principles behind that. So if I then describe to you how somebody breathes in these two different states, if I said to someone who's breathing through the diaphragm, they can see the chest cavity, the whole body going out and in, relatively controlled, evenly paced breath through the nose, and describe somebody where their chest is going quite rapidly and they're breathing through the mouth. Well, you're probably describing two people. One is calm, one is stressed. You can see
that's what they say. Yeah.
You can visibly see the difference between somebody breathing stressed and somebody breathing not stressed. The trouble is, we've all migrated eventually over time, as you've said there, to breathe in a stressed out state, even though we might not feel in a state of stress. But it works both ways. So if I breathe in a stressed out way, that's telling my body I am in fact stressed, and starts to produce stress hormones like cortisol, and these have these long-term negative effects on the body because they're not designed to be in the bloodstream all of the time. So by breathing through your nose and breathing through your diaphragm, we're actually teaching the body to be in a more calm and relaxed state.
Yeah, 100%. A prime example is one of actually his cousin, Claire, who comes and trains here. She's suffering a little bit. She's having some high blood pressure problems, let's say. She was training one night and she started getting a bad headache while she was exercising. We did a blood pressure was high. She's been to doctors and set ball rolling, but every time, so from reading this book and on the effect it can have, even on blood pressure, we just keep telling her to just calm down. So she'll, like, let's say she'll come in. An example is, come into the gym before a training session, do a blood pressure, it's high. Sit down for 5 minutes, concentrate on the breathing, in and out through the nose, 5 seconds in, bit like the box breathing technique, like you said, from we were an SAS guy, actually, we heard that from. Not Paris. And instantly, within 5 minutes, the blood pressure is lower. And it's quite consistently. So it definitely has that calming effect. And the fact that it can alter a blood pressure reading is pretty amazing, to think such short term that it can just do it. So one of the tips that, like, kind of the take home, one of the things from these books is it talks about meditation and stuff, doesn't it? Yeah. They've all talked about meditation quite a lot. And, you kind of sort of saying, like, if you haven't got time to go to a meditation class, and you don't have to go out of your way, if you can just, what have we just said, the down regulate, if you can find 1 or 2 opportunities per day to down regulate when you're sat, even if you're reading your emails, if you can do that and use that as your down regulation time for 5 minutes and breathe through your nose, in through your nose, out through your nose, we're nailing it, aren't we? I tell you what, there's going to be some drunk people if they're doing shots every time.
4 down regulates already. That's fine.
I'm definitely not doing a shot every time. But that can, over a day, over a week, over a month, all of a sudden then you can just be a much sort of calmer, you can just have the massive effect on your body.
What you mentioned there is that classic interaction between how the body works. So if you ask somebody what are the two ways somebody would like typically measure your health: blood pressure and resting heart rate. Okay, they're kind of bog standard. You got the GP, they get the sphygmomanometers out, they're going to take your blood pressure, they're going to take your heart rate. They're kind of standard measures of health. Well, what we know is cortisol is our stress hormone. Okay, and we produce that at times when the body is experiencing stress. But that is always a good thing if it's released at the right time. So imagine that you are on the plains, being a hunter-gatherer, you're trying to chase and gather prey, or you're trying to avoid prey. Well, you want cortisol because you want it to drive up heart rate, drive up blood pressure, push blood out to the muscles so you can physically move around and do what you need to do. But that cortisol is there in your body all the time, so it's keeping your blood pressure up, it's keeping your heart rate up, because the body thinks it's about to experience something stressful all of the time. Well, that takes its toll. Effectively, you can imagine, I think the story I got told when I was doing my undergrad is, you've only got so many heartbeats in your life. So if you're using all of yours up at rest, it's going to kind of deteriorate how long you're going to live for, or how well you can live. So you want to use as few beats per day as you can get away with. So the best way to do that is have a low resting heart rate. Well, if you're calm and you're relaxed, that will drop down your resting heart rate. It will drop down your blood pressure, reduce your risk of strokes, reduce your risk of heart attacks, and generally be a healthier person. Well, sometimes life outside of you causes stress. You can't change that, but you can change your response to that. And the books and the research will show that mood, happiness, stress levels, anxiety levels, these are all reduced by nasal breathing interventions. That's from regular all the way through the day, just breathing through your nose, to 30, 40, 2 hours meditative wellness, mindfulness, give it whatever name you like, focused breathing, and do nothing else but thinking about how you are breathing. So I think we talked about this before. It is such an easy thing because it's completely free and harmless.
Yeah.
If you do it, no harm will come to you. It's not you're going to go out for a bike ride and somebody can knock you off your bike. Or it's going to cost you $2,000 to buy a new bike. Like, it's not that. It's free.
Yeah.
Free.
You're not going to get injured, are you?
No.
We talked before, didn't we? We said, like, if you commute to work, if you're driving, if you get stuck in traffic, like, it's just like, instead of getting stressed about it and wound up that you're running late or whatever, because at the end of the day, that car in front ain't moving, no matter how much you beep on or swear and it's a thing. And all you're doing there is stressing your body, aren't you, and putting it under all that stress. When if you just took that time, just think, well, I'm here, focus on your breathing a little bit, breathe through it, you've just gained, and you've down regulated. How does that say? But it's all little things like that just help us through the day, and we all get moments, don't we, through a day. No matter how busy you are, you can create a 2-minute moment, can't you? And just look away from your screen if you're working from home. Do whatever you've got to do to just have them little bits of time to do it. Somebody who I train, he was telling me that he used on his break, he used to just be on his screen, dealing with clients, doing whatever he's doing, and on his break, he will go on to BBC News. He goes and then start reading stories. And the next thing, oh God, I'm back at it. Like he says, and now he puts on a Real Fire screen on his on YouTube. Yeah, he has that on the screen, and then just sits and look. He doesn't do what else, and he just has 5-10 minutes of doing that. He says, and I just feel like ready to go again, and it's the same sort of this. But it says it's just that same thing again, isn't it? It's having that little bit of downtime that just helps. Like it's nearly like a nap in it sometimes as well. Like if you just shut off and breathe, it's just so you're down regulated and refreshing your body and your mind. So
that's I'll take my socks and shoes off.
Yeah.
That's a GP as well who does that, by the way. So he's read into it. He's chatted to us about the breathing. He's listened to podcasts. And that's what he does in between, is when he has his little 10-minute breaks between patients.
Yeah.
So very good. And like we just said, you're just brushing it then. It's free. You don't have to go anywhere to do it. You don't have to go to the gym to concentrate on your breathing, do you? You don't.
And it's not going to tire you out.
You don't need any equipment.
Sweaty.
Yeah, there's no bad thing that can come of it whatsoever. It's just having time and do it, just believing that we are designed. I'll tell you one of the facts. When you mentioned the book, Elmanel, going back to it, I found this really actually when it talked about the filters behind his nose, behind his cavity of his nose compared to his mouth. Obviously, we haven't got any filters. What you're breathing through your mouth is straight down into your lungs. Any particles, dust, bacteria, straight into the lungs. His nose, I found it hard to believe that it says it used a billiards ball, which a billiards ball I think is bigger than a pool ball. Or is it about a pool snooker-sized ball?
I've not measured them lately, but we'll say the same.
No, it's got to be. Yeah, I don't think I've ever played billiards. I'm not sure, but behind our nose is a cavity the size of a billiards ball. So let's say a pool ball or a snooker ball.
It goes to the back of the roof of your mouth, doesn't it?
Full full of all them little parts that filter all the crap out of the air, everything that you are breathing in, from a bacteria point of view to just dust particles. So that straight away, it's like, you know what, I'm going to make sure I start breathing. I've really been working on it when I do go for a run, you know, side at road, fumes and stuff like that. I'm making sure I'm breathing through my nose.
Yeah.
For that, and I can physically, it's like, my God, imagine I'm just sucking all them fumes straight into my lungs if I breathe in through my mouth.
Well, that's a good point. So, Mark, you mentioned at the beginning that people talk more, and that's kind of what's driven a lot of mouth breathing. Well, that's actually a slightly different theory as well as that, which is the fact that we now live in a much more industrial, polluted society, that we get a lot more respiratory infections.
Yeah,
it's really kind of negative loop, because what happens is if you get a respiratory infection, you get like a sinus infection or a nose, like you get a cold or that kind of stuff. Like before Christmas, I had a sinus infection. I was horrific. It really kind of knocked me. I wasn't down regulated. I was just poorly. I couldn't breathe, but I definitely could not breathe through my nose. So like I was mouth breathing. If you're always getting like nasal infections, getting colds and all these kind of things, it's driving you to use your mouth breathing more and more, because you just can't get air through your nose. But it's a bit of catch-22, because the one thing that's going to prevent you getting more of those infections is what's in your nose.
Yeah, it is. You're bang on.
But so we're kind of in a society which is driving us to be more mouth breathers, because we can't really, like our noses were not designed to cope with smog. They weren't designed to go to foundries or factories or anything like that, or car pollution, or all those different things. So we really have to work hard on that. And I haven't delved too far into it. And maybe I think the Patrick McKeown, but the O2 Advantage, you might be able to tell us, Matt, about nose clearing activities.
Yeah.
If I try to go for a run, I mean, I don't like running at best of times. If I try to do nasal breathing while running, it becomes really unpleasant, because I'm clearing out all sorts of crap out my nose. So I spend most of my time thinking about trying to get stuff out of my nose so I can breathe.
Yeah.
Yeah, awful.
He talks about that you've. I mean, I haven't done that really, to be honest, but I have done. No, I have done breath holds, but not for that reason. But he reckons so breath holds are the way that you actually clear your nose, but you only use your nose in between your breath holds, and while you're walking, you breath hold for as many steps as you can until you start getting that, like, quite a, he calls it air hunger. Do you know what I mean? You start having that thing, you feel like you feel your diaphragm starting to pull in your belly. You do actually, you physically feel it in your belly. It's like, oh my God. Do you know what I mean? Like, and he says do that. But I've been doing it really because it's supposed to be quite good for your fitness as well. Is doing the breath holds. So I do that sometimes when I'm walking dog or whatever. Do you know what I mean? And do the breath holds. I don't hold my nose though, because I think people might look at me as if I'm even more stupid than I am. But if I'm walking around my nose, I
was listening to that, and I was so we'll get into a bit of like strategy about how you can be more of a nasal breather. I was listening to the breath hold, and I was thinking, because I'm going to start taking my little one to swimming and going through some swimming lessons with her. I think I might get like a nose clip when I take her. So like 30 seconds of the nose clip like that. So in the car with a mouth tape on, with a nose clip.
Yeah.
I can imagine like all the other stressed out drivers like pulling up behind me, going, "What's this idiot doing?" And turn around and be like mouth tape to the nose clip on, going, "You're okay, Paul." Yeah. Driving.
yeah, don't mess with that, dude.
Yeah.
So he does talk about that. That's the way of decongesting your nose, he reckons, and you have to do that quite regular, I think. And I probably don't do it enough to do it, but you definitely become clearer. But when you are running, that is still the biggest drawback for me. I run every time I run now, and I have done for a good bit. I breathe through my nose, but that is still snot is still an issue.
Speaking of snot,
it is still an issue, and it's not as bad, don't get me wrong. And I think what you find is, I think the thing with it is, when you first start, it's quite hard to do it. So it's quite a strong breath, and you're breathing hard out through your nose, so you create more. The gentler you can breathe, the more controlled you've got it, the less you're clearing. Do you know what I mean? So if you can find the rhythm where it's a lot gentler, your breath, and under control, I think if you're really like forcing it in and forcing it out, then I think you clear a lot more. But I think the gentler you can do it, which is easier said than done when you're running, then you do find that it's better. So I find if I'm on flat, I'm not too bad. But when you start hitting inclines, and obviously you start breathing a little bit heavy, he tells you to slow down then at that point, so that you don't, like just slow down. But I try running. When I say I try running slow, it's not because I'm super fast, but I think we're all impatient, aren't we, when you get out for a run? Unless you genuinely really just love being out there running. I'm quite impatient. You think, let's get this done. Yeah. So I'm still,
we're probably breathing a bit. The exercise and fitness stuff. I think next week. So
another time.
What would be good to start then is that how did you? We've all had a little bit of a play around with it. How did you guys start? You said you were mouth breathers. I definitely was a mouth breather. The night time for me was the big indicator for me about how much of a nose breather I was. But so how did you get into it? Because there's all sorts of different breathing techniques we see out there. But how do you go about becoming a more regular nose breather?
Me? Well, I'm just more aware of it. I think if I find myself breathing through my mouth, I'm just more aware of it all the time. Whatever I'm doing now, it's like in the back of my mind. So still, I'm hoping one day it will just be automatic and it won't even cross my mind. But I do find sometimes I think, oh, now I'm breathing through my nose. You know what I mean? But I know, especially like when we're dealing with clients, when you're taking classes, you're going to be mouth breathing most of the time. You're talking, you're shouting, you're speaking to people, you're going on. It's natural, isn't it? But I try to straight away at every opportunity. I just try to be a bit aware of where I'm breathing from and switch back. So I think it's just that as much as out, mate, and just just that's what I found, and I do think that's the deaf thing. I do think I am calmer with the good few things. I still fly off handle with kids now and again, but not quite a lot. But I'm definitely I definitely think there's something you're a little bit more.
That's the same with me. It's definitely just awareness. I didn't bother with the old taping mouth shut. There's different techniques, like taping your mouth shut when you go to bed and stuff like that. I didn't, but I was just really aware of it.
I have done that.
I just made sure that I was going to bed and I was laid when I first went to bed, I would just concentrate on slowing my breathing down in through the nose, out through the nose. And just same through the day, every opportunity I get, I just concentrate on it. And I think it's just becoming, like that, I think it's becoming a bit of a habit then. So, to allow to make sure that you do it more, it becomes natural then.
I think I mentioned this, I think last week we had a conversation about it. I thought this was going to be like a skill to be learned, and it's going to take a long, long time to change it. I've been breathing one way for 40 plus years. To suddenly change it, it's not going to just happen. But I kind of think of it a little bit differently now, because I think actually our bodies are programmed to breathe. Like we have anatomy, which is breathe through your nose, pulled into the diaphragm. So actually, I think once you start that process, it's not as time consuming as it could be to skill. So I started little things like trying to keep my mouth closed as long as possible, which is bizarre being a teacher and on a podcast, which is ironic. But the driving to work one was the thing that I put a podcast on and tried to keep my mouth closed as long as possible during that podcast. And we say like the time when most people are most stressed is that commute to work or commute like to and from work where traffic's busy. It's during a stressful time. You're kind of pinned in a kind of metal cage. Most people get stressed. Like road rage there's a reason for that. So it's a time I'm not talking to somebody else, and that makes life easier. And it also then has that kind of stress relief benefit. So I've tried to do that a little bit. And I have noticed my sleep is better, not consistently. And I have got 2 young kids, so I can't put everything down on those, not all nasal breathing. But like me waking up in the middle of the night without the kids waking me up happens less. And I didn't realize that was going to be as big a thing until I listened to a podcast by the Patrick McKeown, the Irish author from Oxygen Advantage, about how many times you get to go to the toilet in the middle of the night and you wake up going, I would never have linked those 2 things to mouth breathing. I would have just assumed, as always, it's because I've had whatever fluid I've had before I've got to bed, take the fluid in, your body uses it, process it, time for it to be released. Especially the older you get, the more frequent that happens. But actually, the more I've become a nose breather, the less likely I am to get up in the middle of the night. So that was like, I mean, you get better sleep, and that's even better.
Yeah, the James Nestor one, he does his own experiment alongside the doctor, and they actually plugs his nose up for 10 days, and so he's only he can only mouth breathe bedtime, through to everything. And it says his blood pressure rises. He can't sleep. He's waking up for the toilet, exactly the same. He's waking up for the toilet more often through the night. So then he's tired the next day. He just basically starts feeling like crap. And he can't, and then he changes, he reverses it then. And then the next little experiment is he tapes his mouth shut as much as possible and opens his nose, and everything reverses. Blood pressure comes down, starts feeling better, stops waking up on the night. It's amazing that you've just said that. So that is exactly what he talks about. Oh, mouth breathing makes you go to the toilet more through the night.
And another way of starting an all, Mark, I think, walking. I think an introduction to it, trying to do it walking. And you can't believe how many people I've told to do it and they feel like they're suffocating walking, just breathing through the nose. But the more you get used to it, it's just, you just do become more efficient at it, don't you? So I think walking is, trying to, well, again, while you're walking, you're probably not looking at your phone then, neither doing it, aren't you? Because you focus on your breathing a little bit, and you probably, it's probably better for you in general anyhow, isn't it? So
definitely.
I think gentle exercise, and when you're sat, I think is just a great place to start, in it.
Yeah, so I think the easiest place to start is just to have your mouth closed as often as possible, in a polite, not rude way, obviously. I think most people could benefit from the gob shut more often.
I could.
And then we've also got those kind of, I'm going to put in the bracket of the kind of mindfulness type sessions where people don't necessarily go there to breathe. It's more the kind of the meditation, mindfulness, psychological side of things. But actually, from my point of view, I've never really been attuned to that. That didn't really kind of speak to me. But the idea of going there to focus on breathing for a little bit, and then the physiology of stress, kind of that appeals to me more, to be honest, than the idea of mindfulness. But there's all sorts of breathing techniques. So I put some links on the show notes, things like the Wim Hof method, the box breathing method, and there's a few others on there as well. I'll just like concentrated practice on focusing your breathing. And actually, for me, it is a mindfulness thing, because I'm turning off from all the other things around me and just focus on the breathing. Although if I thought that's what I was going to do at the beginning, I probably wouldn't want to do it. Bit hippie to me, but
yeah.
But just the idea of having a period of time where you only have to think about breathing probably is quite helpful for a lot of people. And again, you just have to find somewhere quiet, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour, depending on what you got available and how stressed your life is, and just have that practice of using your diaphragm to pull air in and out of your nose. And I think it was, again, Patrick McKeown talking about, you shouldn't hear yourself breathe.
Yeah, it does, yeah.
I think the last 44 years I've been impersonating Darth Vader. Which, as a Star Wars fan, I always thought was a really good thing.
Great, you probably started it on purpose.
Yeah, brilliant. This is brilliant. I'm definitely going to follow.
Yeah, it does talk about that. It should be like quiet, shouldn't it? You shouldn't be able to hear it. You shouldn't even be able to hear it, like feel it hardly, should you? It's so then that goes control. Back to, yeah.
So Cole, sorry, go on, mate. What were you saying? No, I was just going to say a bit mindful of time, because we said about half an hour, didn't we? And then we obviously we'll continue this journey. Like I say, we could talk. We say we every episode, don't we? We could talk about them for hours. You could just keep going on about the different techniques. But like I say, Helm, you'll put some links in, haven't you, for people? So I think I wanted to just say, if you have listened and you've never been aware of nasal breathing compared to mouth breathing, give it a try over the next week or so, and let us know. Get in touch, drop us a message. Let us know if you've noticed any difference.
And I suppose if anybody's got any questions on it, if we can't answer it, but then books are worth a read or a glance through or finding some little bits. But like you said, then breathing methods. But I think that's one of the things. If people want to know what else, then we're here, aren't we? That if there's out that we want us to touch on, then let's have a look.
Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. If you've got experience of it or it's helped you, it'd be great just to have that story shared. So we know that people are listening. That's always nice to know. And people probably find like what we've talked about worked for us, and that's our experiences. But you might have a different experience that we haven't mentioned that somebody else would benefit from. So like the first thing I started nasal breathing was, and it wasn't until I watched the video about the face shape change, was how comfortable it was for me, because it changes where your tongue sits in your mouth. So it pushes up against the top of your mouth rather than flattening out. And I was constantly feeling like I was doing something wrong. I needed a drink, I'll do something, because I wasn't used to the sensation of my tongue being pushed into a different part of my mouth when I wasn't like talking. So like, nobody told me that. So I mentioned that you have a different experience and share it.
Yeah. So keep us posted.
Okay.
All right. Awesome. See you all later. See you, Alan.
Cheers, Mark. See you, mate.
Hey guys.
See you, mate.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
See ya.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you liked the episode, we'd like you to share with us that on YouTube, Instagram and Twitter. You can listen again on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Please leave us a rating and a review, and any comments would be more than appreciated. And hopefully you'll tune back next time for our next episode.